In 08, 09, I was in banking,
Oh,
and
okay.
website called the Implodometer, and we would
Okay.
just watch every day as more and more banks got added to
Yeah.
it was savage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, investment properties, the stock market, and people that didn't weren't adults during that time, they have no idea.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
Yeah, and I was kind of in a bubble because I was in law school. So we'd hear about it, but you're for 3 years, you're kind of like, "Well, we're just, we're here working in law school." So we weren't aware of how terrible it was. Um, but what's funny is you look at that time period, and I've met a bunch of people who killed it because they got real aggressive on acquiring properties, or they got aggressive on they started a business. And I just yeah, whenever there's like a downturn, like my neighbor was asking me about starting a business. Was it, I guess, last year when things were kind of shaky, or the year before? I can't remember when things were. Um, yeah, I think like 2 years ago when there were no startups getting money, and I was like, "Hey, man, there's no better time than now to start." And he was like, "Why?" I was like, "Because we're basically at zero. If you can make
Mhm.
it work now, you'll be able to ride the wave up." And so, I mean, as much as those times suck, like if you can be aggressive, I think there's a lot that can come out of it.
Sure, the depression, the Great Recession,
Yeah.
those are when huge companies
Oh
came
yeah.
into the market.
Yeah.
So you said went for the law school. Did you go to is your wife a lawyer?
No, I just say we because she has to tag along, No, she's my wife teaches at she's like a part-time professor. She teaches at BYU. Um, so yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
The she doesn't happen to, what does she teach?
She teaches like a senior level writing class. It's called technical writing. It's for like engineering students and people that are going to med school and dental school and that type of stuff who need their senior writing class, or advanced writing class, I guess would be the better way to describe it. But
So when you go through that 08, 09 period, you went to you left law behind and went to the startup. What's the
so that
transition?
was 2011, 2012, I guess would be the time around then. So yeah, I went to a start. It was about 2012 because I was in law school from 2008 to 2011. So I missed the bulk of the like down economic downturn just because I was in college, at the time. But there was still like the aftershocks of it in 2011 and 12. It was still really hard for attorneys to get jobs. But I went joined a startup after trying two different law firms, and I was there for about 18 months, and then I wanted to start my own company because I still remember the first day I went and worked at the company. I was like, man, this is awesome. We talked during the day. We all worked together. It's so much fun because like when you're an attorney, like 90% of your day is you're locked in front of a computer and you got to produce work. Like you need work coming out, to make money, and so you got to be. I mean, programming sense, you got to be shipping every day. You got to be shipping documents you got to be putting out work, and you still got to do that at like a startup, but it's a little bit more. You have a conversation, like there's a little bit more going on. And where I was at right then in my life, that was exactly what I wanted to do, and it just took off. I ended up starting a company about 18 months later that was a backpack company. So I left that startup, started doing my own. Um, a company called Brett and Company, and then I ran that for 3 4 years, I think. Um, and then that we actually got into litigation at the end of that company that made you know caused it to have to be wrapped up because my supplier and I got involved in a lawsuit, and so then I had to move on from there.
It's interesting how I had a buddy. He actually his dad was in a rather popular band in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
and he took all of the music equipment that he had around the house and he started renting it to the kids in high school for parties.
Mm,
And then he took that money and started a t-shirt company that made fun of the popular brands at the time. So like Tommy Hilfiger, I think Guess might have been part of it. And his parents had to hire him a lawyer because he got sued by the brands for making
mhm,
fun of them. Um, but that was at the beginning of his entrepreneurial journey. And then later he started a manufacturing business. And the guy that had the warehouse that he hired to do the manufacturing that he pulled in started stealing his ideas and trying to
mm.
sell them himself, and he
Oh,
had
wow.
put the kibosh on it. It's amazing. But how would you in your career think about, now that you've gone through that experience, how do you think about partners? So both in terms of how you hire and
Yeah,
what you're thinking about yourself that you want to offer to the people that work with you.
that's a good question. So as far as like, so I had another startup I did where we raised a little like $1.5 million, and then we couldn't raise any more money after that because we were trying to raise 2 years ago during the latest economic downturn and we couldn't get money. And it was great. It was a great experience. My So what I generally try to find on partners, and what I found on this one was I had never done like a technical app before, and I had a friend who worked at a tech company who had just gone through an exit, and he was trying to move onto something else, and he'd built apps and done technical stuff, and so he was kind of like our technical co-founder, and I was the marketing kind of business side of it. And so I think you really got to hire for your weakness or hire for your areas that you can't do, and that can get tricky because sometimes, well, at least it can be difficult because you kind of treat it like hands off, like, oh, I don't know programming, but you do, so you go and do it. And I think as like if you're going to be a founder, you have to be in the weeds. You have to figure out, are they even good at what they're doing? Because if you're like, oh, like they're the guy, I trust them, everything's kind of riding on them figuring that out. And so it's easy, I think, you hire for your weakness, but then you got to learn what they're doing. If you're going to do an early stage startup, you're not Cisco, you're not Amazon. You can't just hire, you don't have the bandwidth, you don't have the runway. So you got to be really on top of things and really know, you got to figure out if someone's good at what they're doing. And even if you don't know what it is, you got to, I mean, there's no excuse nowadays. There's the internet exists. You can find out anything, you can learn anything. And so you got to hire for your weakness, but you got to keep an eye on what's going on, and you got to, because you got to be able to push them or pull back or figure out what's going on there. And I think the second thing is you got to fire quickly. Once you got to be able to have. There's this book, I think it's called the why method or something like that. It's like, or the who method. It's like how you hire people. And the big thing is you basically create like a scorecard. It's like, oh, these are the things I'm hiring for, these 5 things. And if you treated that like a partner, like, hey, I'm bringing on a partner to do this startup, and you're like, this is why I need to bring on this partner, these 5 things. And so then you only have to learn those 5 things. It's not like you need to completely understand development or coding, or something, but you at least there needs to be some aspect that you need to be able to understand to be able to grade them. And once you see it's not working, of course you need to have a conversation, show, hey, this is where you need to be, this is where you're at, help me understand what's going on. But like if it's not working, you got to cut, you got to move quickly. And I think like startups, sometimes we get caught holding on to friends too long, when in reality it's like you should be willing to just fire everyone to keep the ship going at the end of the day. So you got to be able to like figure out like, yeah, so you got to be able to find people who solve problems you can't, but then you got to be able to move on if they're not really solving those problems.
Well, it's the lifeblood of the business.
What? Sorry.
It's the lifeblood of the business.
Yeah.
You gotta, if you're not, think I read recently, if somebody's not giving you at least 1.5 to 2x what you're
Yeah.
paying them, then they gotta go.
Yeah, because you can't break even. If you're breaking even on an employee, like you're losing money. Like that's, and I also think like when you get into a startup or a smaller business, like the culture of your business is so important, and it revolves around the CEO or the founder. And like if you're holding yourself to a high standard of, oh, I have to do this much in a day, and you're having daily stand-ups, you just start to see, oh, this isn't moving forward. And it's like you want that culture and of like excellency or whatever, but just like pushing each other, because there's no way you're going to disrupt whoever the big guy is in there if you're just kind of like, hey, we're doing a startup, this is so fun, look at us, we all have Teslas, like so cool, we make a lot of money. Like you gotta go to war, basically. That's what you're doing. And so I think it takes just having that mentality. So
When you're thinking about, so outside of a partnership, when you're thinking about your first hires,
yeah.
and you've done this, right? You're now a serial entrepreneur. How do you start thinking about who and when to hire employee number one?
Yeah, that's something I'm trying to dial in right now, with the law firm I'm running. Because I after my last startup failed, I ended up like selling windows door to door for about 6 months as I was trying to figure out what to do next. And realized I was like, well, I have a law firm. Why not just build a law firm? And one of the things I look at is, at least for me, is like when, and I think it's kind of like when I can look at it and say, okay, I can bill these many hours a day, and I'm able to generate, like, I think, at least for a law firm, it's like, when does it like financially not make sense to hire someone? Because if you're an attorney and you run your own law firm, you gotta be bringing in work. And at a certain point, it's more valuable for you to bring in work than to do the work. And kind of and trying to figure that out, or when does that bridge need to happen where it's like, okay, if I bring in someone now, I'm gonna make less money for 4 to 5 months, with the idea being I can have 2 to 3 attorneys in 4 to 5 months if I just focus on growing the business. And so I think there has to be like a multiplier at some point where it's like, hey, even like in a startup, if it's like, okay, here we're day one, there's three of us, we all have 8 hats on. And as like the CEO or as the founder, you have to be able to say, okay, what is the most important thing for me to do? And when the other work is kind of like taking the place of that, where you can't focus on that, whether it's raising money or whatever, you have to start hiring people, finding a way to get people in there to give yourself more time in the day, whether it's social media or whatever it is. As soon as you can't do the most important thing, whatever that is, as a CEO, I think you need to start hiring people. And if you don't have money to hire people, you have to find a way to get people to come in and work, whether that's giving them equity, finding an intern. Like as a CEO, that's your job. You got to solve that problem. And figure out, you don't have the money, find an intern who will work for free, give someone equity who will work for free. And you just got to keep moving that ship forward, whatever it takes.
At your different companies, has that highest value task been different each time, or do you find that it repeats itself on what you need to be working on as the leader?
I think I think it kind of lands on what your skill set is. I think it changes, but there's kind of uh, like I'm fairly good at networking. That's kind of secret, my superpower. I feel like I can connect with a lot of people that most can't. I can get into rooms that most can't. And so whatever I'm doing, that's kind of like the highest priority for me is going to be like leveraging my highest skill. And so I think that's a lot of time connecting. If it's at a startup, you know, connecting with investors that can put money in. That should be my number one priority, because if you're the CEO, you need to keep the lights on. And a lot of time, those tech startups, you got to have more money coming in. As an attorney, it's like I need to be bringing in business. So that means I need to be networking and going, trying to find the right events, reconnecting with people that I'm connecting. Those type, just constantly, that kind of becomes a top priority. I mean, it's different, but it's kind of the same idea, that bringing in business. But there's so Yeah, I mean, I think it does change, but for whatever that, like if you're a great tech person and you're at a startup and you started a startup and the thing you're going to push the company forward the most is the technology you develop or the way you drive the technology. That's going to be the most important to you, is being able to figure out, okay, who can I get around me that allows me to drive on technology, because that's what's going to ultimately turn on the success on what I can bring to the company.
For newer firm owners that are trying to grow the firm and they're looking at networking as a path forward,
Yeah.
what would you why would you say it's worth it to them? Because I've seen a lot of people that I talk to, they're either scared of networking or
Hmm.
they'll join a networking group, but it's highly ineffectual.
Yeah.
They're they're giving leads, but they never seem to get the leads.
Yeah.
What's what are some of the tips and tricks and to squeeze the juice, as it were?
So I think you kind of have to pick a lane and you have to stay in that lane. I am, when I connect with people or I work with someone, I'm very much like, hey, I'll send you leads. I'll send you, and I know I never keep count on what I get back from someone. Um, and I think people call that like an abundancy mentality, or however you want to call it. My approach is, I'm just going to do the things. I'm going to approach this as the person that I am, and I just send leads and I build relationships, because at the end of the day, you have to provide value to people, and if you continue to provide value, it comes back. Now, there's people that are very good in treating it like an exchange. Like, I introduce you to this person, you need to introduce me to that. And I think there's like kind of like there's a fit for every personality. But I think a couple of, so you got to be consistent. You got to pick your lane and you got to be consistent with it. Like, if you're just gonna, if you're gonna be connecting with people and then connecting people, and you're constantly doing that, that's gonna pay off. And especially if you're connecting people to valuable people. Like, I have a couple of contacts that I have no business being their contact. I don't provide any value. Like, me individually at this point in my career, I don't have a reason. They don't have a reason to talk to me. But every time I reach out to them, it's like, hey, I know someone who's doing something you might be interested in. You might not, it might not work, but I think they would be a good contact for you. And now when I text, those people always respond. But I don't waste their time. I never ask them for work. I just try to help. Um, there's a great book. Is it for Fasari? Something. Here, let me look it up. Sorry. It's called, oh, Never Eat Alone. Have you ever heard of that book, Robert?
Actually met him at a conference once.
Yeah, that book is really the foundation. What is his name? Is it Keith Ferrazzi? Ferraz? I'm terrible with names, but it's Ferrazzi, I think. That book set the foundation for my networking, because it's his whole concept is find, you know, you want to meet whoever, I don't know, like the CEO of whatever company, figure out what they need and then go find it and connect them to it. And every contact I have, I just, and now it's to the point where I'm having a conversation with someone, and like I was talking to a friend of mine, she had a startup that, and we had startups at the same time, so we got to know each other in the tech space. And I was talking to her, and she's doing something in franchising. I have a friend that owns 10 franchises, and I go, hey, I don't know if there's any reason for you two to talk, but she's doing a franchise roll up. He does a lot of financing and deals in franchise. Like, you guys should meet. And I connected them, and both sides are like excited to talk to the other person because it's in their space. And now the next time I see both of them, they're gonna be like, hey, thanks for the intro. It didn't work out, but that, like, I learned some. So it's like, if you're constantly sending out, things will start coming back. Um, that's my personal belief on it, and just like trying not to get caught, trying not to keep score, not to see what oh, I connect you this person, you made a bunch of money off it or whatever. It's just like, just keep connecting people, and you're gonna get burned a lot if you do that. You're gonna be on the outside looking in, where you feel like, ah, I connected these people and this thing went bananas, and nobody's nobody's helping. Like, I'm not being pulled into the deal. No one's even giving me any credit on putting the deal together. But it doesn't matter because you know you put that deal together. So now you know you can do that. So you just go do the next one, and you just build up momentum around it.
That
Sorry about that.
makes me think about how I think about content when I'm talking to people. Like, what should I create? What should I do? And I just say add value.
Yeah,
If you don't know who your customer is when you're first getting started, then guess and just try to
yeah,
be helpful from your area of expertise. It sounds like that's what you're trying to do when you're networking. Just add value.
yeah,
And eventually it does come back. I 100% agree with that.
yeah,
That same buddy I told you about, that serial entrepreneur starting from high school,
yeah.
he said whenever he felt he got stuck, he would just try to help more people.
Mm,
And that would always get the engine moving again for him.
yeah.
Yeah, good guy. Um, you mentioned like a franchise. One of the it's making me think about. I saw you're not going to create this business, but your pizza videos on
Mm,
LinkedIn
yeah.
are flipping amazing.
Oh, thank
Like
you.
I want your pepperoni pizza.
Yeah, that'd be a long shipment to send to Georgia, but yeah, pizza. So I have 4 kids, and they're now in. My oldest is a junior in high school now, um, and when they were young, so I've always loved eating pizza. I remember the first time I saw somebody make pizza from scratch, my mind was just blown. I was like, "You guys just made that?" I was in college, like a friend and his wife had me over for dinner, and they just made pizza, and I just could not. I was like, "This is so cool!" And they had a stone, and it just was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And so when my wife and I got married, I tried pizza. It was terrible. And bake, whatever. We tried it a couple times. We bought a stone. Um, and every month I'd make it a couple times. And then as our kids got older, I just started, uh, I was like, what memories do I want them to have? Like, what things I want them to have? Like, how can I have them? How can I make sure they have a memory of me basically in their life? And I was like, we're just going to make pizza every Friday. And so I started, I mean, my oldest son's 16. We've probably been doing this for like 10 years. Every Friday, I
Wow.
make pizza. And, I was just in the oven with a stone, and then we got a steel, and then I tested out different flours. And um, I got the big Gosney dome for a sales goal one Christmas that I hit when I was a partner in a marketing company. And I just it was amazing. And from there on, it was like it's just gone up and up from there because it was just figuring out how to make pizza, and then it's every week it gets a little bit more. It just improves a little bit more each week, and so now it's been. I think I'm on 4 or 5 years with the pizza oven. Now I have 2 pizza ovens. The Gosney people, because I just started posting them on LinkedIn because I mean, it's hard to know what to post on LinkedIn to stand out because you want to stand out. You don't just want to be like, hey, let's talk about this thing that 50 other people are talking about. I was like, what if I just put up a pizza post every week? And sometimes it's 3 posts, sometimes it's one, but it's really just like, and it's super easy. It takes like a minute to film it. Excuse me. And yeah, it's just kind of been this thing we do at our house now. I mean, on now a couple friends show up every week for my kids friends show up, and I make pizza for them. And they're part of the family, I guess. So it's just kind of it's become this thing. Um the funniest thing about it is I walk into any networking event, and immediately I get introduced as, hey, this is the guy who makes pizza on LinkedIn. And it sets me apart. It's good. I love making and it's good to I really love eating pizza, like Italian food. And so for me it's just like it's a win-win because I love to eat it anyways on the on Friday night with my kids.
What are the favorite pizzas?
So I'm pretty basic in my toppings. I've been trying to master the crust. And so we do like a pepperoni sausage. I'll do a pepperoni and pepper. Um, yeah, like sometimes I'll do like a margarita pizza with like tomatoes and bacon. We call it like a BLT, like a bacon, lettuce, and tomato. And then we'll put some look how dumb I am. I can't remember the name of the no, it's not lettuce, but oh geez. But yeah, we'll put a little stuff on top of it. And but yeah, we'll have Canadian bacon and pineapple, which always annoys some people, but I like it.
That's cool that when you go places, people remember that you're the pizza guy, and it does stand out. I think this is important for people to hear. So you said it's easy, and going back to that thing, we put those blockers in our minds that things are
Yeah,
hard, even though we're walking around with a media device right here.
yeah.
Can you say like how do you, I mean, you point the camera at the oven, and it's usually you spinning it around. What kind of editing do you do before you post it?
So it takes me like a couple minutes to edit it. I think I've InShot. Yeah, I've InShot on my phone, and I'll sit down at night before I go to bed. The day take the videos, or sometimes I have to do it. I didn't edit them on Friday night, but I'll just like take 5 minutes, edit 3 videos, and then they're my video feed or whatever, my photo feed, and then that's it. I'm done. And I've tried to do more edited videos where I show people how I make dough and this and that, but I'm like, man, that just takes too much time. Like I'm not trying to be like a pizza influencer. Um, like
Yeah.
I love to make pizza and I love to talk to people about making pizza. And so for me, it's like, what's the lowest way, easiest way to do this, basically. Um,
So you're 2 minutes or less to edit a video that gets you
yeah,
good engagement when you post it on LinkedIn.
yeah, it does. And maybe it's probably too, yeah, because I mean, now I have the model. I mean, I think it used to take me a lot more time, but now I've kind of figured out what engages people when I how to put them together. But yeah, I mean, and the engagement level is consistently whatever 2 to 3 thousand impressions or something like that.
And then when you post something more serious, like you posted, and I'd like to hear more about this, the Delaware and Utah post.
Oh yeah,
Um, you already have a lot of that attention from the pizza. They know
yeah,
who you are. Oh, this is something different. What did he write about? And then you end up,
yeah,
oh, that's interesting. It was a longer post and you get sucked in. I did.
yeah, yeah. So that's the idea is like the pizzas kind of grab people and then talk about more meatier subjects, I guess. Um, and I'm trying to do it in like more of a fun way. I'm not like a when I do talk about those things, have a little bit more fun with it and maybe be a little bit more glib, I guess, to engage people. The biggest LinkedIn post I ever had was like I think it's over 100,000 impressions or something, and it was about a lawsuit that was going on in Utah between Crumble Cookies and this uh, other franchise called Dirty Dough. And it was about, and I love lawsuits. Lawsuits are so interesting to read about. Like, why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? And I was just like, hey, this is a great way for a business to beat its competitors is find a reason to sue them and just run them out of business. And people got really angry at me. But well, some people got really angry, but then some people, franchise owners of Crumble that I know a couple personally, like pinged me personally and said, hey, thank you. Thank you for saying that because we're not the bad guy. We invested $100,000 of our money into this thing or whatever, and um, so yeah, no, it helps build the momentum around engagement, I think.
And now you have so Elon is well he it's not well he's both suing OpenAI and now he just put in a
Yeah.
multi-million-dollar bid on the company at the same time. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, why? Because I think like people get very like hung up on, there's ethics and you should have ethics and you shouldn't be a bad person. But also it's like you should take advantage of the tools you have available to you. And if you have a war chest of money and there's somebody who's trying to come in and be a direct competitor to you, and you're like, okay, maybe this isn't, maybe we won't win this litigation, but we can make their life terrible and get them to take their eye off of competing with us because they're the ones who showed up in our round, like, and open AI is different, obviously it's not, but like if you're, someone comes in and starts directly competing with you, I think that's part of the game is like, if you can find a reason to sue them and make it hard for them to do business, you should. Like, why wouldn't you? That's, you're trying to win just like they are. And I guess that's not very abundant mentality, but it's also businesses to, you don't get into it to like, sorry, I'm like going off on uh tangents, but Pete, we talk about business like it's play business, just the way you like would play games when you were little. Like everyone, we're all friends, we're best buddies, we all care about each other. And in reality, those people don't ever really make it, don't ever really get out of that like play stage. Because as soon as it gets hard, you have to sue someone, you get sued, you run out of money. Like you're no longer playing business. Now it's a real business. And you realize as much as there's an abundancy, there can be more than one company who does the exact same thing. There's McDonald's and Burger King. There's always a winner. You don't ever look at like different brands and go like Dell and Apple, same thing. No, Ford and Chevy, same. People have a winner they pick out of those, and the idea that it's like, oh, we're just gonna like we're gonna build these businesses and just be friends for life. It's like, no, you probably won't. Like if you're competing in business, it's not gonna end. It's not gonna be like 50 years of bliss. It's a war, and you got to be willing not to break the law, not to be unethical, but you got to be willing to win. And that takes suing people sometimes.
Yeah, you see it even with partners with
Yeah, yeah,
all of these, like with NVIDIA. You have all of these people that are looking to build their own chips,
yeah,
because they want to control their own supply chain and control those profits.
yeah, absolutely.
What what law are you in today? It's for fundraising, but not the type maybe people are thinking about.
Yeah, so it's corporate transactional work. We do a lot of fundraising, like Series Seed, A, financings, and then I also do so general corporate work, like company formations, but I also do fund formations and fund counsel. So I help set up funds. Last year, I set up over 20 funds that we're going to go, out trying to raise money and do whatever, different investments. So a lot more like capital transactions or corporate transactions, I guess, is kind of where I'm finding my way to more.
Do you think it's important to, you've had your fingers in, it feels like different segments of the
Yeah.
market, or different markets altogether. Um, how much does it matter that you enjoy what you're doing versus seeing an opportunity and going after it?
So I went all the way through law school and I was like, I'm going to be this corporate attorney. I want to get a big, job at a big firm or whatever, all these things. And I didn't realize I'm at my heart, I'm an entrepreneur. And I think for me, like what I enjoy more than the work I'm doing, more than anything, is starting things. My friend and I will often talk about entrepreneurship in that it's like, for me, it's oxygen. It's not like, oh, I can go work for someone and then I can go back out and do my own thing. It's like, no, the only thing that gets me going and gets me excited is entrepreneurship in that, I'm starting something, I'm building something. And so now I'm at a point in my career where I've realized like it doesn't really matter the work as long as I'm building something. That's oxygen. That's the excitement. Like I was working till like 11 o'clock last night. My practice. I got done with some work. I was emailing some people. Buttoning up some things, And I got done and I was so jacked. Like I was so excited. You would think like I'd slept for 10 hours and woke up refreshed. Like it took me 2 hours to fall asleep, more because it's like my thing I'm building. And it's like, and I'm building it. I'm doing the things that, maybe I didn't do right the last two times I started companies, that, I'm taking a more whatever. I understand better what needs to be done on a daily basis. Maybe that's it. I'm matured, but that excitement about building is to me that all that matters.
What are some of those self lessons that you have gotten a hold of where you're like, okay, this is the focus. This is what needs to happen on a daily basis. This audience is service-based businesses,
Yeah.
and it can be arranged from the solopreneur, relatively small business
Yeah.
to all the way up to medium size. But I'd say, especially for the people just getting started or in the smaller space looking to get up or grow.
Yeah.
Um, what are some of those internal mechanisms that need to be developed?
Yeah. Well, I think one, you have to be honest with where you're at. Like, if you're a solo guy and you have a small service business and you're making 8 grand a month or seven, like which by the way, you're murdering it if you're making 8 grand a month as a solo guy. That's amazing. But you start looking at it, you're like, okay, I want to double my income in the next 12 months. I want to get to where I'm making 16 grand a month. You have to be able to reverse engineer where you want to be on what needs to be done. So like my revenue goal every month, it's like, okay, uh, say it's 10 grand and I, if I do 30 hours, if I bill 30 hours a week, I can make $2,500 a week. It's like, okay, so every day I have to be averaging 6 hours a day. And if I know, okay, on Thursday, I take half a day and I just focus on where I'm at as a business, then by Wednesday, I got to be 3 hours ahead. So then I got to do 7 hours on Monday, Tuesday. Like you kind of, there has to be a level of reverse engineering of where you want to be and like moving backwards. And if it's like, okay, I want to get to 20,000 a month, but I don't have those clients. Okay, well, let's reverse engineer that. How long does it take to find a client? Where's my ideal client? How do I find, like, you have to be able to work backwards from where you want to be. And then you have to set that goal. You have to set, okay, every day I need to do X, Y, or Z. You do that every day. Like, if you want to grow, like people call them non negotiables, whatever, however you want to call it, you have to do those every day on a consistent basis, and then it happens. There has to be an ability to like look forward, see where you want to be, see what that will take, and then just reverse engineer it to a day by day basis, and then you have to do it. Like you have to get over the excitement of being an entrepreneur and just grind until you can hire someone to take on that grind that needs to be done every day, so you can focus on something else bigger that needs to be done that will help it grow.
That's really good advice. I don't know if I have yeah, right here. Have you seen this book by Back to Your Time?
Uh, I I haven't listened to it. I heard that guy speak at a conference.
Yeah, it's really good. The way he's got a quadrant on how to think about what's both what fulfills you and what makes you money, and to
Yeah,
as quickly as possible get into that direction. So
yeah,
you're always doing the work that you enjoy the most. So it's
yeah,
a really interesting book. Highly recommend it. Um, because you mentioned grind, and sometimes you just simply have to do the suck.
yeah. You have to suck it up. There's always going to be something. There always is going to be an aspect of grind, whether that's like finding new customers, like grinding through that. You always have to have the ability to say, okay, this is what needs to be done. I'm going to do it, or I'm going to make sure it gets done by following up on my team. So,
Yeah, it's really easy to find an excuse not to do the work
oh
that
yeah,
needs to be done, but it's it should get done.
yeah,
I heard an entrepreneur yesterday. He said someone was asking him about wealth, and he said wealth is when you don't have to do the shoulds anymore.
yeah,
you do what you want to do and what you must do, but you don't have to
Yeah.
mess around with the shoulds. So that was
Yeah.
pretty interesting definition.
Yeah.
So you're good at networking. That's your magic sauce. But you also were a partner at a marketing agency. So how are you thinking about firm growth now to get you where you want to be? So you've reverse engineered, but what about in terms of growing the brand and attracting attention and converting leads,
Yeah.
et cetera?
That's a good question. That's what I'm trying to figure out right now. I'm trying to focus on LinkedIn, just being consistent there. It's kind of like a 90-day. Like I want to be consistent for 90 days on posting so many times a week, kind of forcing myself to post because it's very easy to post when you have something to talk about. But how do you post, you know, 3 times a week about something, maybe you don't have something to talk about every day. Maybe, I don't know, but it's finding that and I don't, maybe LinkedIn isn't the place to be, but I think it's free and it's easy. So I should at least be doing that. I want to expand to do marketing on, do that also on Instagram and some other platforms, just consistently this many times a week, focus on, try to find messages that resonate on those platforms. Um, I think that's the bare minimum as a owner of a company. I should be trying to make those work because it costs your time. And if you can, maybe it takes 6 hours, 9 hours a week to start posting, I don't know. And then in 90 days, I can make it more efficient, get it down to 6 hours a week or whatever. I think that's like the starting point. There's audiences out there. There's people who want to start companies. There's lots, there's people who fit the profile of what I'm looking for as a client. And so I should at least be posting on social media. Um, and then beyond that, it's just I think having a website, you got to have like the basics, a website where people can go, those types of things, and then just continuing to like a lot of legal is word of mouth, so it's like building those relationships, kind of getting your name in those intersection points when people are going to be fundraising, they're going to be setting up a company. Who are the people that people are talking to when they're doing that? And trying to find those kind of intersection people when people are going through those transitions where like, hey, I need someone to help me raise money. And like, oh, great, you should go work with these guys. They're awesome. It's like how do you get top of mind on people like that? And that's posting. I think it's posting regularly, but it's also networking, having conversations, phone calls, reaching out, texting people, asking them how they're doing, a lot for me, since my career has been so different over the years, is really just like catching up with everyone I know, saying, hey, this is what I'm doing now. Like I try to reach out to 10 people a week and just have a conversation. It's like, and I'm not even asking for business. A lot of times I call and I say, hey, I'm trying to figure this out. Can I ask you some questions? Like, great, love that. And then in that, in the course of that conversation, they find out what I'm doing. I find out what they're doing, more deeply what they're doing. How can we connect? Who can I send their way? And just consistently doing that, because I have enough work every month. We're making good money every month, but it's like, okay, let's think out 9 months. What do we need to be doing today to have an impact in 9 months, 2 years? And it's like just talking to as many people as you can, asking for advice, talking, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going. This is how many formations whatever fundraising I've done. I mean, just kind of, and then keeping that conversation going every time I talk to somebody. Hey, we've raised, I've done 25 financings the last year. And like, oh wow, you really know what you're doing. The next time that comes up and someone's like, I need an attorney to help, they're like, go over here. So it's laying that groundwork, trying to leverage for what works best for attorneys. I'm not an accident attorney, so I can't really just run ads and put up billboards and those types of things that are successful for those. It's, hey, we're a corporate transactional attorney. How do we grow word of mouth this way? So
Couple pieces of gold in there. One, you're making money, but you're still diligently planting the seeds of growth
yeah,
for the future, which is phenomenal. people always need, there's, I had a old sales manager said, when you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you're rotten.
Yeah.
You always need to be moving forward. And I really liked what you said about making those phone calls and connecting.
Yeah.
It's a really good idea to just reach out and have conversations with people. I can see where not only does it grow the network, but it keeps you sharp. I mean, you want to listen. So
Yeah.
listening is a super important skill. But being able to communicate and sharpen who you are and what your business does,
Yeah.
that definitely evolves over time.
Yeah.
To being real clean about that. What So tell me, just it was interesting for people thinking about where to put their companies. If it's not a local service business, what's going on? Why has it traditionally been Delaware that people want to form a corporation? Why is it
Yeah.
starting to trend down? And then what were those four reasons that you feel that Utah is a good place where it
Uh,
could shift to?
Yeah. So for Delaware, it has been the place for businesses for the last however many years. I mean, I don't know exactly the year when everything it just became set up your company in Delaware, but I mean, they're at the point where, they completely control the business formation market. And part of it is so if you file a lawsuit against a business in Delaware, they have a specific court that hears that case. It doesn't go through their regular trial courts. And so the judges you work with are become specialists if they're not already specialists in business law, business disputes. So there's a lot of they just have that kind of groundwork there, and there's a lot of precedent. Like people understand, like there's precedent to rely on, and it's been pretty consistent over the years. And this isn't the first time they've made a CEO mad by ruling against them, but I feel the way Elon handled it created probably the biggest fracture in it because, and I haven't read the case, and there's gonna be some attorney who's gonna start screaming at their phone or whatever that I'm an idiot. I haven't, but I haven't read the case. But from what the research I've done around it is it invalidated the decision of a board. Now that's why Elon left. He's like, we're going to Texas. And now Meta is following. And when Elon left, most people, I don't think it was like, oh, people are kind of like, okay, it's Elon Musk. Elon Musk is doing Elon Musk things. Um, and then Meta's following. And now Dropbox is rumored to be leaving Delaware. That's where it starts to get really interesting because those companies, like like if you go to a venture capitalist and you say, hey, we want to raise money from you, they're excited, they want to raise money from you, and you're not in Delaware, they will most likely force you to move your business to Delaware, to move your formation state to Delaware, mainly because if there's a dispute, there's some predictability around it. Now, what could happen now, and this is a hypothetical, say an entity, there's a venture firm, they invest, they decide to move on from the CEO, they fire him. And then the next thing the board does is dilute the CEO, and then they're going to go public. And so the CEO makes, I don't know, 30, 40% less money he would have made on the public offering. There's a world where that CEO says, for whatever reason, that's unfair to whoever as shareholders, we're going to sue and stop you from going public. Now, maybe that CEO doesn't win, but that might ruin the company. And if you're a VC, it used to be, oh, the board has discretion to make business decisions. You really didn't have any ground to stand on for a fight. Now a CEO could go, oh, I'll sue him. Like if a CEO wants to burn everything down, he could sue him and stop it. Now, we haven't been told by a single venture firm that they want to move their companies out of Delaware. That hasn't happened yet. But with Meta and Dropbox going, it's only a matter of time, in my opinion, before a venture firm says, we only work out of Nevada or we only work out of Texas or wherever. And and maybe that never happens, but there's going to be a state that starts landing all these big corporations who want to leave Delaware. And so Nevada has a very similar privacy. I think someone was telling me so does Texas. I'm not an expert on Texas law. I haven't went and researched what they have. But I think that there's an opening if a state wanted to treat their state like a startup and go, hey, let's get serious and make this the landing spot for all these corporations who want to leave. And I think they could do that. One, I think you have to set up a business corp. Like I think it's called the Chancellery in Delaware. That's just for businesses, and you need to set that up as like the number one step. And you'd have to have a way to set up and say, here's our precedent, or here's our business law that you follow, and we're going to incorporate this precedent from these states because these are whatever, these are more pro business or whatever, to make some predictability around decision making. You would need to have, Delaware has no state income tax, so they don't double dip on business taxes in Delaware. Most states don't, but there's also like an air of like, oh, there's like really low taxes. Their technology around their formations are really good. And they entice people. They have a way of enticing people to go move their businesses there. And so, I mean, I think any state could do that. And I mean, one of the reasons Delaware doesn't have any state income tax, one, it's a small, super small state, but two, all this business formation revenue is flowing through their state. And so, I mean, there's an opportunity. Whether a state will get aggressive and take that chance, um, it'll be, we'll see. And maybe Delaware will patch the issues in their precedent so they can get people coming back, or not lose any other big startups. But most big companies and startups go through Delaware. And so there's a ton of money to be made by a state if they wanted to get aggressive and go try to compete with Delaware. So yeah, that's kind of the idea behind it.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. I've seen where more companies have moved to Texas,
Yeah.
and they're definitely into lack of regulation. I learned yesterday they're the only state whose electrical grid is not regulated.
Huh.
Yeah,
Well, that stuff happened a couple of years ago, probably in
yeah,
Houston or wherever when it snowed. But
yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting. And the Texas is weird because it's such a big state that they might like, I don't now. I don't, like I said, I'm not a Texas expert, but people might find a judge in some small sleepy town in West Texas who they know they can go to and they can get a favorable ruling around X, Y, or Z, different than they would the whole of their state. So that I think that until someone invests and gets that business court that there's more predictability around, states are it's gonna be hard to find one king of formation, basically. Um, so, because I mean, for Elon Musk, it was a $50 billion mistake, or $50 billion impact on his bottom line, that they rejected. He couldn't pay himself that much. Now, I don't know all the facts of it, but if it's like, I mean, that's I've never heard of a state overruling the compensation of a CEO, and or a company's compensation. So maybe they did something extremely nefarious, but he moved to Texas and said, "Don't ever do business in Delaware again." That was a huge impact on him, and now Meta and now Dropbox. And if Andreessen Horowitz or one of these big VC firms goes, "Oh, we're moving everything to Texas, we're moving everything to Nevada, or we're
Mm.
moving everything to Utah," and that becomes the place. Oh, we should all register because Andreessen Horowitz did it. All these venture firms just follow them and start setting up all their entities in Utah or whatever state. That's going to have a massive impact on Delaware.
Yeah, take care of your customer.
Yeah, yeah, you got to be aware of it. Obviously, you don't want people breaking the law, but if your precedent has been deferral to the board to make business decisions, and then all of a sudden, you get an advocate, you get some judge who wants to make a point or whatever, then you really, yeah, it creates an opening at least.
So maybe not as exciting, but valuable for the listeners when they're thinking about forming, or maybe they're in the wrong type of entity. So for service-based businesses,
Hmm.
um, what are some of those structures they should be considering?
So the number one thing is you want to absolve yourself from liability. You want to make sure if there's something goes wrong, they can't come take all your personal assets. They can take the business assets, but they can't come after you personally. And so the easiest form of that is an LLC. That, limited liability corporation. Most states, if I think all states have the ability to do that. That's one of your least expensive ways to register a company. There's different ways to set up the taxes. I'm not exactly sure on taxes side, not being an accountant, but you least want to limit your liability. And if you're just like a small service-based business, an LLC is probably the easiest way to start. You don't have a lot of paperwork. It's not going to cost you a lot of money. You don't have a ton of yearly upkeep. Um, Now, with that said, if you're like a service business and you're like, I want to set up my company to be acquired by a private equity company in 10 years, which if you're a service business, there's a lot of private equity roll-ups right now. That's a very sexy thing is people are going after service businesses. I would start, look at where you want to go, obviously, and then reverse engineer on your way back. Most likely you're going to want to have a C Corp because then you can take advantage of the qualified small business stock, which basically allows you to lower your taxable income on the purchase of your shares. And I can't remember the exact limit, but there's a limit up to like in the millions of dollars that get a lower tax rate than you would normally. And so if you want to get serious, at some point you would set up a C Corp. Now, C Corps, there's going to be a lot more management. Now you have to have a board, you have to have stockholders. Now, if you're the only stockholder and the only board member, it's easy, but you still have to do board meetings and et cetera. And so, like, if you want to get more serious, what I recommend to people is an LLC, especially someone. Say you're not very sophisticated legal, you don't know an attorney who can help you out with it. Set up an LLC. They're super easy. The maintenance is low, and focus on your business. And then if you're like, hey, this is working, go find a good attorney, have them help you set up a C corp, and go from there. I think too often people that are there. So I had a client I was talking to, and I helped them fix some legal stuff. They're buying out a partner, et cetera. Did some reorganization stuff, and we get done, and the guy goes, "All right, what's next?" And I go build a business. I was like, right now, like, great, like this is done. Maybe there's some other things we could do, but they're not super high priority. Go build a business. Go build something people will pay you for. And so my focus, or my what I tell new business owners is set up the easiest thing for you to do and then build a business. And if you get a business going, then figure out the next steps on the legal side, whether it be setting up a C corp, changing how your LLC is taxed, whatever is the best fit for you. But the primary thing as a business is liability wise, protect yourself, figure out, I guess, the best tax approach, and then build a business. And don't get too caught up in it until you need to.
It's good advice. What types of service businesses are you seeing being acquired?
So I think there's the big one was HVAC was a big one. Uh, a lot of those have been acquired. What was the other HVAC? That's the biggest one. I guess dental offices have been big in being acquired and being rolled up.
Yeah, that
HVAC.
actually, my one of my previous dentists, that's how he ended up at his company. It got bought out by a larger firm,
Yeah,
the previous owner, and then he bought into it, and they
yeah,
provide all of the infrastructure, all of the um, office software, all of the marketing,
yeah,
communications, all of it. And he's a dentist every day.
yeah, yeah. And so dentists are big. I mean, I think there's just lots of like anytime there's like a service that is repeatable. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe you want to do a roll up. Maybe I mean, you could do a roll up of basically any type of service as long as you can build a structure around it to make it profitable. Um,
Yeah,
and maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's opportunities there.
something I've been thinking about is the estimations that I've been hearing about from all of the tech guys are 5 years. We'll have within 3 to 5, we should have a million plus Android robots within 5 to 7, maybe 10, but nobody's really going out to 10.
Mm,
We should have close to a billion androids. I'm thinking about the impact on more of the blue collar service businesses. So
mm,
your home builders, you have your framers, you have the landscapers,
yeah,
builders, etc. And that would be an interesting model. You have the capital to be able to lease the androids to go
yeah,
forth and build the business, and you build a model around that. That could be make it easier to both sell or to have a framework for acquisition of other companies.
yeah. Or you could be the person who services the bots because
There you go.
if there are 10 million of them, they're gonna be breaking down all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, it's interesting because you look at like even you hear that and your initial reaction is, oh, you're going to put a bunch of people out of jobs. And you look at like all the technological advancements, computers, phones, like there's always more jobs that come out of it on the other side of it. And I know everyone has this like fear of, of AI, but it's like if you leverage AI, man, you can grow fast. And I just think that's going to be more of it is people figuring out how to leverage it. You don't need to have 10 people to do one job, but then it's the competition for that job to get the job is going to be a lot higher too. So
I think you're going to have a segment of our population or the global population that are able to leverage the technology and they do something with it.
yeah,
And then, uh, unfortunately, I think there's going to be a bigger section of people that they're not thinking about it or they feel
yeah,
like they don't do anything about it.
yeah,
Just watching JD Vance was over in France, and he
mm-hmm.
was talking about, um, 2 years ago, everybody was talking about security. Now we're talking about how to leverage it or gain, to
Yeah,
derive value out of the models and to not be afraid of it. But I'm sitting there thinking about the group of people that maybe they're technology phobes or whatever it happens
yeah,
to be. I think there's going to be massive disruption. So I think we're going to have
yeah,
we're going to have a massive opportunity,
yeah,
job creation. I think a lot of people are going to get destroyed, but there's a book called The Rational Optimist that if you look over the history of humanity, it tends to work out, even though bad stuff
yeah,
happens. That we'll have a moment of intense friction, but that it ends up really good on the other side.
yeah, yeah. One thing we focus on with our kids, because I look at where I'm at, and I'm like, okay, I'm probably where I'm at until I retire, sometime in my 50s or 60s, whatever. And things will change, but I have good headwinds. I think we'll be, I need to keep improving and changing. We should be okay. But when you look at like the next generation, it's like what's going to set people apart. And one thing we do every week, because I think what will really set people apart is being able to set and achieve goals. Because if all of a sudden everything's easy to create, it'll be easy to create crap. But if you're able to set and achieve goals, I feel like that's what's going to really set people apart, in that you're able to stay driven, focus on high quality content, because it's going to be so easy to watch Netflix and work. It will be. Let me ask Chat GPT; they'll do it for me. I'll watch a movie for the next 3 hours. But the person who says, "Okay, well, I'm going to leverage Chat GPT and I'm going to do as much as 10 people in an 8-hour day," they're going to go, "Okay, that guy. We don't need the rest of them. We just need that guy. We need 10 people like him." And so we actually every Saturday, Sunday night, we sit down, we all have goal books. They have like a calendar, old school calendars, and we set goals every week. We set 6 month goals, we review them, we talk about what's your goal for this week, what do you want to do. And it's been just interesting watching my kids kind of, we've been doing this for a year, and you start to see like little seeds of impact. Because I don't know if you have kids, but teenagers are wild. They're so much fun, but it's like they're just crazy. They're all the stuff that's happened in their life, the hormones are hitting. You're just like, who is this person today? And then the next day they're nice to you, and it's just like this wild ride. But you start to see these seeds where you're like, okay, that thing we're doing, like goals are important, and they now they caught it. They caught a little bit of the vision. So let's keep pushing. Let's keep, because when you don't want to burn out your kids, but you don't want your kids to just play video games all day, because that really, the way it's going is you'll just be able to sit around and just be served with things all day if you want. Like, AI will do your job, whatever. You can watch a show, you can look at social media. But it's like, how do you actually set yourself apart? And it's like you gotta have something to you. You gotta be willing to chase things and set goals and achieve them. So
Yeah, I mean, you literally give up your own agency if
yeah,
you just stop. And
yeah,
people talk about, I want to be free, but
yeah.
freedom requires effort.
Well, and freedom is not, because if you're like, I want to be free so I can travel, I want to be rich and travel and I'll be happy. It's like you're going to be miserable. Nobody ever in the time of our world has ever been like, I got rich, started traveling, and everything was perfect. In fact, that person is going to be depressed very rapidly. So, like, freedom is not having enough money to not work, or maybe it is that have enough that you don't need to work, but you choose to work. You choose to do what you want to do, that like creates value or gives you, some feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah,
You know,
we derive meaning from the effort, and then at some
yeah.
point, you're good with your money. You retire, and that's when you get to do whatever in the heck you want.
But then that's when you're like, oh, I did that. We traveled for a minute. Let's go do this other thing. Let's go help people. The rest of it, like there's real meaning. Yeah. Anyways, that's kind of my
No,
my
I hear
thoughts
you.
on it.
I mean, how
Uh,
many people talk about, hey, I just want to retire on the beach and drink margaritas, but that's going to be good for like 2 days.
well, yeah, yeah. You're gonna get bored, and it's like, my idea is like, we're done. It's like, all right, that would just have a law firm to help people start businesses and help poor people, whatever. Let's do this until we're done. Let's enjoy it now.
What I've seen where you wrote about tech companies as well. What role does technology play in building a company right now?
I think it plays a lot. I think there's a lot of opportunities to leverage Chat GPT, to leverage. I mean, there's no reason to not know anything nowadays. Um, like I had a question about a legal thing, and there's a guy that I can go to and ask. He kind of knows everything, but he was busy, and I was just like, I'm gonna start asking questions at Chat GPT about this. And in 30 minutes, I figured out how to do it. And I was just like, there's no excuse to not know how to do anything. And when you're starting a company, the first thing you got to figure out is what don't you know? Because if you don't even know what you don't know, what do you like? Your ego's getting in the way of actually learning. And so the first thing you have to figure out is what don't you know, and then leverage the technology. Start asking Google. Google has like the free AI answers, and I mean, you should be able to learn anything you need to know. There's no like, you have an accounting question, Google it. You have whatever legal question, Google it, and you should be able to figure out whatever you need to know business wise. Someone's made a marketing video, exact type of company you're trying to build. Go start there and build on top of that. I mean, there's no reason, like, you cannot let the lack of knowledge impede your growth.
Yeah, whenever I'm helping marketers, um, that's been my career path was
Yeah,
coming out of marketing. It was always all of our stuff is online.
yeah,
If you can't see, you'll find it on YouTube, social media,
yeah,
whatever, but your entire knowledge base is right there.
yeah. You're trying to figure out how to market a specific product. Go find a website that shows that, then go get on social media and see exactly how they market it.
Yeah, and then you replicate the process for yourself.
Yeah, you
And yeah,
start there, start, and you'll be able to refine it, get the nuances, but you have to start somewhere.
for service-based business owners, what would be your one piece of advice to that gold nugget to put in their brain right now?
I think you got to treat, like, if you got to treat everything. Well, let's see. One thing. Um, I think you just have to get better every day. You just have to get better. Like service, you got to provide service to clients. You got to get better at doing that every day. You got to get better at doing your job. Like you kind of just have to be like, as cliche and dumb as that sounds, if you're getting better every day, every year you'll get 365 times, 365x better. And if your company will improve 365 every year, and if you do that every year, there's no way you can't be successful in the end.
I think if you combine that piece of advice with we're talking about that daily activity, if you do something every day,
Yeah, yeah,
focusing on that outcome of growth,
yeah,
the magic happens.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, you can go back and yeah, it's that intense focus, but just getting better, like linking together enough days of improvement that you can look back and go, oh, last year I couldn't have handled this complex of a job, but I continued to build and grow, and look how complex it is now. Last year I couldn't have had anyone on my payroll. Now I have five. You know, just continue. Excuse me, continual improvement, continual growth. That's what gets you where you want to be. There's no salt. There's no quick fix. It's every day grinding out, improving, and just putting enough of those together that you start to see the improvement.